Hello, I'm Kenneth McIntosh. Some of you know me from presentations that I've made at our Highland Festival in years past. It's been a great privilege and joy to know all the wonderful folks from the Northern Arizona Celtic Heritage Society. I've just loved being part of Knox through the years. I'm also known as a writer. I have published a Celtic fantasy novel, Magic Reversed, and very recently published a picture book with a lot of information as well about the Green Man, titled Soul of the Green Man. Now, I'm really not a violent person, but I've always been fascinated by the swords of legend, most particularly the Arthurian romances, and of course, the swords associated with Arthur in that. The sword pulled from the stone and the sword delivered by the Lady of the Lake. In fact, I have a Excalibur here, which is based on the sword for the Clive Owens movie, King Arthur. It's kind of a fantasy idea of an early Middle Ages sword. It has a lovely Damascus steel blade. I actually bought that at our Highland Festival about 5 years ago from a vendor there. I also have a more realistic Excalibur. If there was an historic Excalibur, it would be a Roman style spada, or long sword for the cavalry. And again, this was purchased at the Tucson Celtic Fest. Again, it has that lovely patterned steel blade that you can kind of see shining in it right there. But there's a sword that I've wanted for about a decade that I could not afford. In just a moment, I'm going to share screen and show you that. So about a decade ago, I was in the Dingle Peninsula of Ireland at the Celtic and Prehistoric Museum. And this is the first time I saw one of these Bronze Age Proto-Celtic swords. It struck me as simply a work of art, as a beautiful and graceful thing. And I began imagining what it would look like originally, and it was really intrigued by that. More recently, in the Scottish National Museum in Edinburgh, I noticed that there are whole cases full of these early Celtic bronze leaf-shaped swords. And I'll show you in a moment, the one that I recreated is based on one of these. Now, when I speak of Proto-Celtic cultures, I am talking about the culture groups that archaeologists identify as coming out of the Iberian Peninsula and also across Eastern Europe and all across Europe and the Ireland and the British Isles around approximately 500 years BC. They speak of the Hallstatt and Latin cultures, and these are known for these very graceful leaf-shaped bronze swords. And again, I think they're beautiful. They are weapon as art. I also think of Cuchulainn and the Ulster Saga and the ancient swords of Celtic distant mythology, Irish mythology. And frankly, I do think of Conan. Robert E. Howard's hero was sort of a proto-Celtic warrior. So I was very fortunate that before the pandemic hit, my friend Robert Berg, Bob Berg of the company Thunderbird Atlatl, said to me, hey, we could make our own bronze swords. And I was very excited and happy to go in with him on doing that. So the first step is to make a wooden prototype or model of the desired blade. You can see that's based on one in the Edinburgh Museum that was fabricated by John Jefferson, a friend of Robert Berg and mine, who's very good at making beautiful things out of wood. and a wooden box with two halves. This is used to hold the clay. The model is then set in the clay, and the other half of the box packed with clay is set on top, and they're pressed together tightly to make an imprint of the blade. Then when the box is taken apart in the middle, again, very carefully, so the clay will not fall out, you have a hollow mold of that sword. Now, I should note this actually does tie into legend. This is an easy way, an inexpensive way to make a mold, but the problem is that clay can only be used one time, and it's rather tricky to have it not fall out and disintegrate. So in ancient times, sword makers in these proto-Celtic cultures realized that they could take stones and make mold with two halves like this, but they would carve down into the stone the shape of the blade and use that to cast over and over and over again. And in fact, folklorists tell us that the story of the sword in the stone may harken back to the time when swords were molded in stone, in stone molds like that. So Bob Berg made a kiln from a repurposed oil drum and asbestos bricks that was heated with a propane tank and a shop vac to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can see how amazingly hot that is. Then in order to make the bronze, we had copper, which was from recycled old pipes, and we added 10% tin into the mix. Now, bronze made from copper and tin is the first alloy that people discovered ever on Earth. You think about all the things we enjoy today. Think about rocket ships that can fly to Mars. Think about laptops, phones. All those rely on metal alloys. And I think that the invention of bronze was maybe as big an invention, as big a leap for humankind as the invention of fire. Alloys are a sort of magic. You take that miracle of extreme heat and two natural elements and something that is sturdier, sharper, holds form better than anything that occurs in nature. And indeed, I did feel like I saw sort of a miracle when we took the crucible out of the kiln with that superheated, incredible energy heat. You can see these pictures are taken at nighttime. The lighting in that picture is coming from the molten bronze in the crucible itself. There we are, very carefully pouring that into the mold. It's quite a dramatic and exciting moment. And then you wait, let it cool off a bit, take the box apart and remove the casting from the mold, and there you have it, a rough sense of one's bronze sword blade. And then I spent a week hand finishing with file and sandpaper, trying to get the blade down to a shinier, pretty aspect like you see there. And it made me understand why these blades were so valuable. I mean, this is a lot of work, and there's more work back in the ancient days. No wonder that these bronze swords were seen as a gift fit for the gods. And in fact, they were often sacrificed in holy wells to the deities of the land. If you're in the Edinburgh Museum, back in their ancient Celtic section in the basement, you can see there's one whole lot of bronze blades that were bent to be unusable and deposited together and found in a holy well. So again, back to Arthurian myth, the sword that is given by the Lady of the Lake, the goddess of the lake, and returned to the lake, reflects this very ancient practice of giving these bronze swords to the water deities. We're going to stop share now and show you the finished product. So you can tell I really worked on polishing and getting a nice sheen on that blade, try and hold it right so you can see it reflecting the light. It's got this mirror-like image. You can see the stained glass window behind me reflected on the blade there. And it's fairly light. It's actually a very maneuverable weapon, point of balance, about 2 inches ahead of the hilt. For the grip, I took a 2,000-year-old, more than 2,000-year-old piece of bog oak from Ireland that I found on eBay, and I fashioned that into the grip. And I like the idea that an oak that grew at the time when swords like this were used could be used for the grip. For the pommel, I got a piece of European red deer antler that would be appropriate to Ireland and to Scotland in the Bronze Age, and used the cap of that for the pommel. And then for the jewel in the pommel, I took a piece of raw Baltic amber, worked on it for a day, carving and polishing. The ancient Celtic people loved to trade amber from the Baltic. It was a form of wealth with them. And in fact, we do see amber decoration on ancient Bronze Age swords in the archaeological record. One fascinating thing is, while I was working on that amber jewel for the pommel, as I sanded it, I could smell a smell like fresh pine. And that means that smell had been trapped in that raw amber for 60 million years. So that smell was just like a moment of time travel. People do ask questions about this sword. One question is, does it glow when there are orcs nearby? The reason they ask is because in the movie, The Hobbit by Peter Jackson, the sword Sting is in fact, Bilbo's sword is in fact based on these ancient Proto-Celtic leaf-shaped weapons. So it does look like Sting. I don't know if it glows when there are orcs around. Please, if you see a party of orcs from Mordor traipsing across your lawn, let me know. I'll run over. We'll see if it glows or not. The other question is, how sharp is it? And the answer is, it's not sharp. Now, I've struggled with this. I would have loved to do what was done historically, which is to peen the edges, to pound the edges into a super, super thin little paper-like protrusion, and then go over that just once or twice with a whetstone. And I understand from other sword makers that you can get a very sharp weapon with a bronze blade, but I did not do that because I want to use this educationally. Children love to handle sharp, pointy objects. I don't want to have to be yelling at them not to touch anything dangerous. And I have found, curiously, that most parents like to have their children with all 10 digits after a demonstration like they had before. So I haven't sharpened it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I really miss my friends from Knox and my friends from Northern Arizona. I hope I'll get to see you sometime again soon in real space. Here's a toast to all of your health. Slàinte.